Tuesday of Tes Nisan Tovshin Ein Gimel. We're in Teres Menachem Sefer of Mamarim Tovshin Yud Aleph Tovshin Yud Beis, and the Maimer of the second day of Shiur of Tovshin Yud Aleph Alpayim Shana Kadma Teira Libiriyasish of Elam on page Tzadik Ches at the beginning of the first paragraph of V'ha'inyan. The Rebbe explained that there are 5 levels in Torah. Torah as it is bound up with Atzmos, the very essence of Hashem. Torah at the level of Chochmah and Bina. Torah at the level of Midas. Torah at the level of Malchus. And Torah at the level of Olam Hazeh, as it manifests itself in this physical world, in the learning of Torah and the fulfillment of mitzvahs of the human being. In each one of these, or rather in the in the levels beginning from the Shashuyim. Well, let's back up a second. Each of these 5 levels is alluded to in the 2 psukim in Mishlei. V'ehyeh etzlei amein, v'ehyeh shashuyim yom yom, misachekes lefanav b'chol eis, misachekes b'tevel artzei, b'shashuayes b'nei adam. The 4 latter levels of Torah are all connected to the idea of shashuyim, of tainug, of pleasure, because notwithstanding the fact that they are lower than tainug, which in Sfiras would be atik, the level of the inner dimension of Keser, nevertheless, it finds expression. Torah finds expression, or rather pleasure, tainug finds expression in each one of these levels. In Chochmah, in Midas, in Malchus, and even down here, in the learning of Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs of the human being. Because Torah is rooted beyond all of these. In other words, Torah at the highest level, as it is in Chochmah and Bina, the phrase is Eiraisim Chochmah Nafkes, Torah comes from Chochmah. And the Rebbe explained this as meaning that Torah comes from Chochmah. Chochmah reveals Torah, but Torah is actually rooted beyond Chochmah. Where is Torah rooted? In Keser, in Atik, or even higher in Atzmos, as we explained over here. So therefore, in each of the levels of Torah, there is an element of tainug that's connected to it. Then the Rebbe went on to explain that there is learning in a form of Er Yashar and learning in a form of Er Chezer. Learning in a direct way and learning in a returning way. Learning in a way where there are no obstacles, and then learning in a way where there are obstacles. And the Rebbe explained that in the mode of learning Torah with obstacles, there are a further 2 modes. One is when the intent of the learning, what's the tachlis of the learning? Or rather, one is when one learns with haravanya, with toil, with yigiyah is Torah. And the other one is when one learns for the purpose of knowing what one needs to do, for the purpose of fulfilling Hashem's will. In the former, the Rebbe said, we could still understand that there is a concept of pleasure. Why? Because since he is toiling for what purpose? In order to achieve the understanding of what he's learning, therefore there is still this idea of pleasure connected in the accomplishment of it, in reaching the goal of understanding what one is learning, because that comprehension brings with it tainug. What about when one learns for the purpose of knowing what Hashem wants one to do, fulfilling Hashem's will? Since over there he is more like as the Rebbe said, the marshal of the slave. His purpose is to the Kabbalah's oil dimension. What pleasure could there be there? So the Rebbe explained, no, even there is pleasure as well, because we find that even a slave can take pride in a job well done for the master. So therefore, there's the element of pleasure even in that what we would consider otherwise very low level of learning Torah, where it's just for the purpose of what? Of fulfilling, knowing what we need to do, and not wanting to step outside of those confines even a drop. Nevertheless, it could still be Tainug. And the Rebbe concluded by saying that there, the Tainug is even greater in a sense than the Tainug in the other levels. Because notwithstanding the fact that it's the lowest level on the one hand, on the other hand, since the entire point here, the entire intention here of the individual is just so that he knows what Hashem wants him to do and not err, even in the slightest, so whose pleasure is it? In other words, his whole being, his whole purpose, the whole exercise is for one purpose, it's not the person, it's rather it's Hashem. So therefore the pleasure that's associated with it is Hashem's pleasure. That's where we're up to. And over here the Rebbe is going to explain that in Tainug, in pleasure, there are two elements, two types of pleasure. There is a Tainug hamurkav v'hamurgish, a Tainug that's made up of other things, or finds expression through other things, and then there's pure pleasure. And this lowest level that we just described is associated with the purest form of pleasure, which goes back to the original source, Torah as it is in the very essence of Hashem, which finds expression dafka where? In the learning Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs of the human being at this level. That's where we're up to. Page Sadik Ches, paragraph. To explain this, through the second mode of learning, in the way of Ur Chayzer, meaning to say, as we just explained, that in the Ur Chayzer way of learning, in the learning with when there are challenges, there are two modes. So the second one is which one? When a person learns for the purpose of knowing what Hashem wants him to do, and is so overcome with awe and fear of Hashem that he doesn't want to step outside of that. That's why that's the framework for his learning. So through this mode of learning, we reach the essential pleasure of above, which is in terms of Sfiris, Bechinas Pnimius Atik Mamish, the innermost dimension of Atik, which means the highest level of Keser. Mash'enkin Beifana Aleph, not so in the first mode of learning in Ur Chayzer, where he learns for what purpose? To understand the material that he's learning. And it's Ur Chayzer, why? Because because he invests tremendous energy and toil in it. There, although you do have that element of Tainug, nevertheless, over there it's not the same as what was just described, Pnimius Atik Mamish, because in this mode, Shal Yodim Agim Rak, Bebchinas Pnimius Abba Pnimius Atik. We arrive at the level of Pnimius Abba Pnimius Atik, which is a quote from Pri Eitz Chaim, which means we arrive at the level of how Atik, how the inner level of Atik finds expression in the inner level of Abba, which is Chochmah. Which means to say as follows. As mentioned before, along the lines of what was mentioned before concerning Eiraisa me Chochmah Nafkes, Torah comes out of Chochmah. Chochmah brings out Torah. Chochmah reveals Torah. Right? The level of Chochmah reveals Torah. And what did we explain before? That it's Eraisa me Chochmah Nafkes, but Torah is beyond Chochmah. Right? Torah is the revealer. Chochmah is the revealer of Torah. So Torah is rooted beyond Chochmah, and Chochmah reveals it. So, and that's why we find this idea of Tainug at the level of Chochmah as well. As we said, Shashuyim Yom Yom. Why is it called Shashuyim? Yom Yom is Chochmah and Bina, level of Chochmah and Bina, and nevertheless we refer to it as Shashuyim Tainug, pleasure. Why? Because it's as a result of this dimension, this aspect of Chochmah revealing Torah from a level which is beyond it, from Tainug. So in other words, in simple terms, as simple as we can say it when we talk about such esoteric levels, you have Pnimius Atik, the innermost dimension of Atik, which is the highest level of Keser, and even higher than that, or rather in a higher Olam, it would be a Torah as it stands in Atzmus. So you have that aspect as it is in its own state, as it is in Pnimius Atik, and then you have how Pnimius Atik finds expression in Pnimius Abba, in Chochmah. Right? So in other words, when we talk about this idea of Pnimius Abba, of Chochmah, so you have the Chochmah aspect of it, but then you have the Nekudas HaAtik, the point of Atik, as it is within the confines of Chokhmah. Let's go back to Seder Shtalshalus. When we talk about Seder Shtalshalus, one level coming from another level, the higher level giving birth or revealing the lower level. So usually what we're talking about, when we talk about Seder Shtalshalus, the idea is that a higher level contracts and shrinks down and makes room for a lower level. So Kesed is Kesed, Chochmah is another level. But then in the interrelationship between these different dimensions, there is also a Seder where the higher level, as it is the higher level, not shrunk down or contracted, finds expression in the lower level. If you remember, we looked in a previous Maimer about Moshe Rabbeinu, Kimina Mayim Mishisiyu, and so on and so forth, that although he is in Tikkun, there are elements of Toyu that remain undiluted in Moshe Rabbeinu as he is in Tikkun. Right? Kimina Mayim Mishisiyu. Similarly, Al Derech Zeh, in the interrelationship between each level, in the normal Seder, the higher level belongs where it belongs, in its confines, and then the lower level is already a lower level. But nevertheless, because of this interrelationship, you find elements of the higher level in the lower level. And specifically, you will find certain levels, certain lower levels, have a shaykhs are more related to certain higher levels. Just like we mentioned before concerning Levi. V'avad al-Levi hu, right? That Levi is Gvura, Levi is also Bina, because they're all in the left line. And Keser will find expression in Bina. Right? So there are certain relationships that are outside the normal Seder of how things are. Similarly, when we say Atik, so there's Atik as it is where it is, but then there's a special relationship between Atik and Chochmah, that Pnimius, Atik Pnimius Abba. Right? That Pnimius Atik finds expression where? In Pnimius Abba. So in the innermost dimension of Chochmah, you will find elements of Pnimius Atik. But what is that? Even though it's, in a sense, it's Pnimius, undiluted Pnimius Atik, but it's still as Pnimius Atik, the innermost dimension of Kesef, is in Chochmah. It's not as Pnimius Atik is on its own. So there must still be a difference. Because Pnimius Atik, as it is really truly on its own, remains there. It can't find expression through Chochmah, otherwise you wouldn't need the level of Chochmah. Right?
Is it in transition?
Not really, because when you're talking about transition, you're talking about how the higher level is in the mode of giving room, if that's what you mean, giving room for the lower level to come into existence, right? Here we're talking about when Pnimius Abba, when you look at Madregas HaChochmah, so you have, let's put it this way, Al Derech, just a dugma from something, an example. It's not mamish the same thing, but along those lines, which is related to this week's parsha. This week's parsha begins, the first parsha, Tazriya, begins with the words Isha kisazriya v'yolda zocha. A woman whose egg will fertilize and she will give birth to a male, a zocha. What about the yolda and the keva? Later on it says, in the keva teiled. If she will give birth to the keva. Why Isha kisazriya v'yolda zocha? Should have said Isha ki yolda zocha, just like it says later. In the keva teiled. What's Isha kisazriya v'yolda zocha? Chazal say, Ish mazriya tchila yeledes nekeva, Ish mazriya tchila yeledes zocha. If the man's egg fertilizes first, the child will be a nekeva, a girl, and if the woman's egg fertilizes first, it'll be a zocha. That's what Chazal said. So the Alter Rebbe comes and look at brings a very interesting maimer there where he talks about what determines the sex of the child, whether it's a boy or a girl. So he brings Pirush HaPhilosofim, Tato Gavar, Elo Gavar, brings a number of opinions. He negates them all. And he says as follows, something along these lines. Zochar is Chesed. The male is related to Chesed, the Mashpiyah. Nekeva is Gvura, the receiver. Right? Like we're saying over here, Chochmah and Bina, Abba ve'ima, right? Chochmah is the father, Bina is the mother. Chesed is the Zochar, the Nekeva is, the Gvura is the Nekeva, right? And so on and so forth. Mashpia, Mekabel, etc., etc. So, he says like this. Chesed and Gvura are opposites. Male and female are opposites. This is water, this is fire, this is Chesed, this is Gvura, this is Mashpia, this is Mekabel. How do they come together in such a union that they become like one? How does that happen? They're opposites. So he talks about Hiskalalus HaMidos, the incorporation of the Midos one with another. As we say in every night in Sfiras Eimer, Chesed Shebechesed, Gvura Shebechesed, and so on and so forth, right? Every midah has an element of the other midah in it. Right? So therefore he says like this. L'tzerech hazivuk, for the union of the man and the woman, the man awakens within him the Gvura element that's within the Chesed. And the woman awakens within her the Chesed element that's within her. And through the Gvura Shebechesed and the Chesed Shebegvura, that's where the contact begins, and that's how the union can take place. That's what Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. Therefore, Isha Mazras Tchila, if her egg is the Mazras, the first one, fertilizes, I think that's the definition of Mazras, fertilizes first, if the female egg fertilizes first. So because we're talking about the essential point of the union, so what's more powerful here? The Chesed aspect, granted from within Gvura, but it's Chesed Shebegvura. So what comes as a result is Chesed, is a Zochar. Whereas Ish Mazri Tchila, because of the fact that what is most powerful here at that point of union is what? The Gvura aspect, Shebechesed, but Gvura nonetheless, therefore what comes as a result is an Akeva. That's what Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. What does that mean? So when you look at the female, it's Gvura. You look at the male, it's Chesed. But if you dig deeper and you come to the essential point, you will find elements of the Zochar and the Nekeva and elements of the Nekeva and the Zochar, which could be triggered and accessed at certain critical points, which manifest themselves in turn as Chesed or Gvura, right? So similarly, when we talk about all the interrelationship between the spheres, so you will have Chochmah, you'll have Bina, this will be Mashpia, this will be Mekabel, but then within them, you will have elements of the other. So in a similar sense, when you dig deeper down into Pnimius Abba, when you go to Pnimius Abba, the core, when you go to the inner core of Chachma, you will find Atik. But that's in a very subliminal form. Because full-blown Chachma as it is Chachma, it's not Atik. Right? So now, is there a difference between how Atik is at where it is and how Pnimius Atik finds expression in Pnimius Abba? Absolutely. Because this is a full-blown tzir of Keser, and this is a very subliminal Nekuda of Atik as it finds expression in the inner core of Abba. In actual terms, where is the difference? The difference is, what's Atik? What's Pnimius Atik, as we said over here? Tainuk, pleasure. So pleasure, as it is associated with Chochmah, will be composite. It's not pure pleasure. It'll be pleasure which needs something else to find expression through it, or needs something else to trigger it in order for that pleasure to take place. That is how Tainuk, how Pnimius Abba is associated with Pnimius Atik. Whereas when you talk about Tainuk in its purest form, that's Atik. That's pure Tainuk, not made up from anything else, doesn't need to find expression in anything else. Tainuk on its own. Now obviously when you're talking about such high levels, normally and usually they don't find expression, because they're beyond everything. Where do they find expression? Says the Rebbe over here. In the lowest level. V'shashu hayas b'nei adam. Torah at the level where it is connected to the human being, learning Torah, fulfilling mitzvahs. In this physical world, over there you have the Tainuk ha'atzmi. When a person learns Torah for the purpose of not deviating from the Eibishter's words and not deviating from what he's instructing us to do, and has this tremendous Kabbalah soil, over there you find the Tainuk Atzmi of the Eibishter. Let's see how the Rebbe articulates it inside. So the first way of learning Torah, in the form of a Cheser, when a person toils in learning, over there it is, we reach the level of Tainuk Atzmi Shalamayla, which is Pnimius Atik. I'm sorry, in the first way of learning, over there we reach only the level of Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik. Which means, for although here the intention is not, the meaning is not. It's not that the Pnimius Abba, the inner dimension of Abba of Chochmah, clothes and conceals the inner dimension of Atik, but rather what? It does reveal it at that level of Pnimius Atik, of Pnimius Abba. Nonetheless, it's still, we're talking about how Pnimius Atik is drawn down into Pnimius Abba. It is not the level of Pnimius Atik itself, on its own. Whereas in the second mode of learning Torah, in order to not deviate from Hashem's desire, even a drop, and there you find pleasure, over there you'll find Pnimius Atik itself. What's the difference between the two? What is the difference between Pnimius Atik, as it finds expression in Pnimius Abba, and Pnimius Atik Bamish? The difference is the difference is similar to the difference between a felt and composite tainug, a tainug made up of other elements, to pure tainug, pure pleasure. As explained also concerning the revelation of godliness that will take place in the time to come when Mashiach comes, the Alpayim is sometimes it's brought in Chazal that what? Aristoin Pirush, Su'ud al-Abayker. Sometimes it's brought that Hashem, in the future time, will make a morning meal, I guess a big breakfast, for his servants, the tzaddikim, when Mashiach comes. In other places, Chazal bring, in Gemara, that in the time to come, there is no eating and no drinking. So what's going on? Will there be a big meal? Or won't there be a big meal? Will there be food or no? So this explains, they will both exist. These are two levels in the revelations that will take place when Mashiach comes. First, it will be the revelation of Tainug, the inner dimension of Atik, as it is felt and as it is made up of other elements. Which is the idea of what? Pnimius Atik, Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik. And therefore, this is the idea of this meal that will take place. It's Tainug as it expresses itself in what? In Achil Shtiyah, at the highest level. And later on, then we come to the revelation of the pure Tainug, the pure pleasure, the essential pleasure that's not felt at all, that's not made up of anything else. Which is the idea of an Asid Lavei, where there is no food and there is no drink. So in other words, they're both true. The lower level is Tainug, as it finds expression and is made up of something else, which is Pnimius Atik, Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik. Atik, as it finds expression through Chochmah. Achilu Shtiyah. Then you have the idea of Tainug Ha'atzmi in its purest form, Pnimius Atik Mamish, and that is the Achilu Shtiyah. So these are two levels in Tainug itself. And then the Rebbe concludes how this highest level of Tainug Ha'atzmi finds expression in the very lowest level. And that is Mitzvah tomorrow.